Welcome to The Total Woman. We're going to be talking about elder law tonight, something I've wanted to do a program on for a long time, and I'm glad I waited because I have an opportunity to now have Lucy Budman with us. And I know that she's going to be enlightening us with a lot of things that we may want to know or may not want to know. I'm not sure what.
I think it's good to know. It's always better to plan ahead.
It's absolutely always better. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. I was so delighted to find you. That worked out so well.
Thank you.
I'd like you to start out with a little bit of your background, just so people know where you came from and how you got interested in the law, perhaps?
Sure. Well, my family's always been involved in helping professions. A lot of the people, the women in my family really have been physicians, going back to my grandmother. And I knew that was something I wanted to do. But medicine ended up not being for me. My little sister's a doctor.
So it was for somebody.
It was for somebody. Somebody is carrying on the tradition.
Good.
But I did know I wanted to do something to help people. And I ended up, going to law school at BU. And I did legal aid for a couple of years out of school. And, it's a great thing to be able to do. The people who work in the field are just tremendous. And yet at the end of the day, when you're doing that type of work, you realize that you're just up against so much, just in terms of resources, in terms of, if you're doing a landlord-tenant situation and someone can't afford to pay the rent, eventually they're going to get evicted.
Yes.
And it just wears down on you.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah. So one thing that, it transitioned over time into doing more and more elder law issues where you can really help somebody in their family. And at the end of the day, you can create a situation where, you might not be able to save everything, but you can help somebody just make sure that they get old comfortably at home.
Yes.
And they have the resources that they need for themselves and for their family.
Well, that's a very big job to do. And an important one, because I think Americans in general are really worried about that.
Yeah.
They keep hearing about Social Security disappearing, and quite honestly, Social Security won't do the job for you anyway.
It's true.
It's very nice and very helpful. But
it's true.
It's not
if you try living on Social Security, that's not going to get you very far, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so this is something that you found your way to from doing other things, and it resonated with you.
Yeah, when I started doing it, I just found that it just made me really comfortable, that this is something that I can do. This is my niche. And just the people that you help, just make it really worthwhile. Just because when you have someone who comes in and they're just not sure what to do, either it's someone's child who's in there for their parent or for their grandparent, and they just need direction in terms of what happens now. And sometimes, a lot of the time, we have someone who's wondering, well, what's going to happen to me?
Sure, of course.
Of course. I mean, that's the number one question. Someone, you just retire. You're 65. You're pretty young, but you start to think, well, what happens next? What happens in 10 years? What happens in 20 or 30?
Yes.
People are living a long time.
Yes, they are. It's very true. So let's pretend that someone is coming to you with a concern, a financial concern or a medical concern. Where do you begin with someone?
Well, we start off by getting a sense of what their situation is. Because the situation of somebody who's 65 and newly retired might be very, very different from someone who's just thinking about planning when they're 85 and have had a diagnosis of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. Depending on where you are, we start out with the foundational issues. Right now, most people, when they come to me, they're still able to make medical decisions and financial decisions for themselves. But over time, you might not be able to do it anymore. And one of the most common misconceptions is, well, I'm married or I have children, and these people are going to be able to automatically step in for me if I get sick. And people believe, and probably with good reason, that my husband or my daughter is going to be able to step in for me and make those kinds of decisions. And that's just not true. If you haven't done any planning, then there's nobody who's authorized to make legal decisions, financial decisions, or medical decisions for you. Your family, what they can do is they can go to the probate court and talk to a probate court judge and get authority to do that. But that's really expensive. It takes a long time. You know, our courts are great, but they're really overburdened.
Sure.
And just like a lot of areas in society are right now. So what might be a relatively simple process ends up taking months or years.
And you need a
And
decision
you need
now.
a decision now. Yes, you know, if your grandmother's in a nursing home and you need to pay her bills, but you can't get access to the money because she's sick and she can't sign her checks anymore.
Yes.
You know, you need something to happen right now.
So what do you tell them?
Well, I tell them the best thing to do is plan in advance. You can have a durable power of attorney to make economic, financial, legal decisions for you. And you can name someone now while you're healthy who can do those things for you.
Yes.
And sometimes people say, well, you know, can I get one off the internet? I've seen them on there.
Yeah.
And that can be a real mistake. A lot of those powers of attorney online are intended for younger people who are worried about fraud, which unfortunately does happen.
Yes.
And they're worried about giving too much power to their agent.
Yes.
But if you don't give your agent enough power, if you know you're an older person, you trust your family, you trust your spouse, you want to give them all the power.
Yes.
Because if they don't have the ability to do something, if say the power of attorney doesn't let them transfer your house, they can't take steps to protect it. They have to go back to court, back to the probate court judge, and ask for permission. And they might not get it. The probate court judge has a lot of discretion, and some of them have different feelings about, you know, what protecting a house might mean.
Sure.
And how your money should be spent.
Interesting. In some states, because my mother in her elder years was in Arizona, which has paperwork like I couldn't even imagine anybody bothering to have this much paperwork. And I needed 4 power of attorneys, 4 different ones.
Wow.
And so let's not talk about Arizona since we're not there.
Yes.
In the state of Massachusetts, does a durable do everything, or do you need real estate and medical, and do you need special ones in addition?
Well, what a durable power of attorney, it basically does whatever the document says it does. We don't have a statutory power of attorney in the state that has been created by the state government in terms of it can do this or it can do that. So it has the powers that are written right there in the document. If it doesn't say you can do something, you can't.
Okay.
Usually where people will have something separate is for healthcare. So they'll have one for finances and legal and one for medical decisions.
Okay.
And that'll be called a healthcare proxy.
Yes.
And so it's a little bit simpler than Arizona.
Yeah.
We don't have all 4. But it's important in the one that you have to make sure it gives you the power that you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to see somebody who specializes in this.
Yes.
Because elder law is confusing, and it's